Welcome back to the channel. I'm doing another video about these Cen-Tex shooting sports two-gun matches, or I should say multi-gun matches. A few different ways you can do these, two-gun, handgun, rifle, three-gun with a shotgun, 2x4, you can choose, rifle, PCC, handgun, a bunch of different ways you can do this, which is actually why I like this match a lot. It gives you a lot of versatility with what you can do and how you want to improve upon, which skill set. So we're just going to talk about this match a little bit. Rifle I'm using is the same Sons of Liberty Sage 12.5. Little bit different on this one match. I did actually have to use the lower receiver from this rifle, which is the Daniel Defense Mark 18 upper. The lower is just a PSA lower with a Hypertech trigger in it. Nothing super special, but we will explain why I had to use that lower here in just a second. So let's get on to kind of the shooting and talking about each stage and what I felt like I did decent on, what I felt like I could improve upon, so on and so forth. So why did I have to switch the lower on my rifle? So that rifle, the Sons of Liberty rifle that I was using normally, I have a lot of rounds through that gun and a lot relatively recently in a short period of time. So I did go to Ohio Range Day with Achilles Heel Tactical, which is, if you've don't know what that is, feel free to look it up. But it's basically a 3-4 day training event for people within the industry. You can sign up. If you get approved, you spend some money for a ticket. You go out, select a few classes, and it's basically an industry training event where you get to take some classes from instructors. You get to compete in different kind of competition stages throughout the entire 3-4 days you're there. Meet a ton of awesome people, do all kinds of stuff. Got to take a few classes with Velox, did a night vision class with Kinetic Consulting, shot out of a helicopter, had a lot of fun competing against people that are significantly better at shooting than I am, but really cool event. So if you're interested in going to that, make sure you check it out. But the reason my gun was so dirty is because I shot about 3,000 rounds within a period of about a week, whether that be at Ohio Range Day or actually when I got back, I did some more shooting with some people that I actually met at Ohio Range Day. And then took a night vision class at Ohio Range Day with Kinetic Consulting, where throughout the night it started getting a little more damp, a little cooler in Ohio, and I brought the gun back, didn't worry about cleaning it, continued shooting it, and it just got so much carbon within it that moisture caused that carbon to really turn into basically glue, and the gun wasn't working properly. So stage one, I'm the very first shooter of the day. I take my safety off, pull the trigger, and it basically just starts going into full auto, which I actually have on video. I can show real quickly.
Whoa. Ooh. Hit.
What is going on?
Hit.
That's not right. I'm not going to keep shooting that.
You want to call?
It's dropping the hammer.
I thought you were double tapping. You weren't pressing.
So that was a small example. I immediately was like, hey, something's wrong. I'm not going to shoot this gun. I have a different lower. Can I swap? And they were just like, yeah, sure. Go swap lowers. That's a legitimate, safety concern. So swap lowers and we'll, continue going throughout the day. So swap lowers, no issue at all. The gun is working fine now. I took it apart, cleaned it, took the trigger out, cleaned everything. It was just so gunked up that the trigger wasn't resetting properly and the hammer was just dropping when the bolt would, reciprocate, go back forward, load the next round in. The hammer would just immediately drop. So swap to a different lower. Rest of the match went fine. So first stage, we get to the stage. I was supposed to be the first shooter. I ended up not being the first shooter because of those lower issues. But once you get up there and start shooting, you engage from the left side a little T hanger with 2 steel targets. Move to the right side, do the same thing on the right, and then you move into the shooting area. And there were 3 targets on the left and about 5 targets on the right, just paper, 2 on each paper. Ground the rifle, use the handgun or shotgun in some people's situations to engage the Texas Stars. Actually felt like I did pretty good on this stage. Didn't have it really any problems with the T hangers. Engaged all my rifle with good hits on everything, and actually cleaned up the Texas Stars pretty quickly for not really having a ton of experience with Texas Stars. felt like I actually did pretty solid on this stage. So overall, I was actually very happy. This was probably my best stage of the day. There's honestly really not anything I would change other than, maybe just shooting a little bit better. But that, everyone wishes that. So really happy with that stage. Second stage was a little bit more interesting. It was a handgun only stage. At the shot timer, you moved through this shooting area that was basically just a straight line with steel targets on the left, right, left again, and then a swinger at the very end, which is so much fun with handgun. Actually started pretty strong. Get to the right side, and for 3-gun shooters, this was actually a stage that was done primarily with shotgun. So some of those steel targets were significantly heavier, and on the right side was where they had the larger steel targets. I had to shoot most of those targets more than once to even get them to fall, which kind of sucks. I'm never really a huge fan of when stages are designed around shotgun shooters, because if you're doing it with a handgun, you're just at a really big disadvantage, especially when you're going against shotgun shooters that are using semi-auto shotguns with like the same mag capacity as you are in a handgun. It just puts you at a massive disadvantage, especially when we got to the steel swinger. So moving through the shooting area, I felt like I did pretty solid, minus a few misses or maybe not shooting targets high enough to get them to fall the first time. But once we get to the steel hanger, I actually did the swinger, in my opinion, pretty well. Normally I struggle with those. I feel like I got it to go over pretty easily until I had to reload. That slowed momentum a little bit, but still got it to go over pretty quickly in comparison to other 2-gun shooters that were using handgun only. Now, where this stage is annoying is the times were massively skewed towards 3-gunners, because most people shooting shotgun only shot that steel, swinger 2, 3, maybe 4 times with a shotgun to get it to go all the way around. So when I have to shoot 15, 16, 20 rounds into a steel swinger to give it enough momentum to actually swing, and they can shoot it 2 or 3 times, it just means that their times end up being significantly faster than anyone shooting handgun. So I actually feel like I did pretty solid on this stage. It's just not really representative in time, and that's kind of a bummer. But overall, solid stage, and still felt like I did pretty good on this one. Next stage was the stage in the creek, and I've said this numerous times every time I go to this match. This stage has always been cursed for me. Every time I go to this match, I do horrible on this bay, and this one was no different. So T swinger on the starting position with some steel targets. You actually started with handgun, draw, shoot a field steel targets, and you were supposed to engage a what's called like a high threat target, which is one shot at about 40 to 50 yards with handgun, and then you had to drop the mag and shoot with no mag in. If you missed, you had to load another mag, rack it, drop the mag again, and take a shot. Um, my brain just did not process this very well. So you see me, engage with my first shot. I get a hit, and I just kind of sit there for a second. I'm like, what am I supposed to do again? I'm like, oh yeah, I take the mag out and hit my second shot. So both shots were good. There's just that little delay where I realized, oh wait, I'm supposed to drop the mag and shoot. Once you did that, you're supposed to pick up your rifle, and there's a few targets that you need to engage pretty much immediately, because if you go too far to the right, there's actually a barricade where you can't see those targets anymore. I immediately start to run and realize, oh wait, I didn't finish shooting those targets. And luckily, where I stopped, I could still see them. So I finish those targets, start moving again. There's a few paper that you need to engage with rifle. And my plan was to shoot the right target, transition to the left target, and then go back to another target that's further to the right. And the reason I wanted to engage that one last is because from where you're shooting, if you try and shoot both of the targets on the right immediately, the further target is actually behind a bush and you can't see it. My brain, after now making 2 mistakes, made another mistake, and I, forgot that I wanted to go right, left, right, and tried to go right, right. And I had to sit there for a second and realize, why can't I see that target? And then my brain processes, oh, it's behind the bush. Shoot left, go back to the target on the right, shoot that. And then you have to finish with some further steel. Some people were mounting their rifle on the barrel, and I think I may have wanted to do that, but still was able to hit those steel targets at probably 150, 200 yards without too much of an issue. Finish on one more steel target to the left, pretty small target at probably 50 yards. Should have done better on that, was just shooting too high. Took a few more shots than I needed to. But finish that, drop the rifle, kind of run down the hill into the creek bed and engage, some targets down there. Overall, my shooting actually was not bad. The main thing that I was struggling with was just the mental processing of this stage. And that really messed me up. But overall, solid shooting. I think, I really just, the takeaway from that one is just work on stage planning a little bit more and just really make sure you're not just, walking through and looking at the targets and figuring out where they are, but really mapping it out with, I'm going to do this, transition into this, transition into that, and this is how I'm going to run the whole stage, instead of just saying, okay, well, there's some targets here, there's some targets there, I'll do this and this and this. I'm not going to worry about it too much. Stage playing is really important with some of these more complex stages where you really have to make sure you're shooting this target in this order and so on and so forth. So stage planning is really just the big takeaway from that one. Now for the next stage was actually a split stage. Three gunners went and did a specific like shotgun only stage. Two gunners went and did a specific handgun only stage. So myself and I think two other people in our squad were two gunners, and we went to the handgun only stage. Actually did pretty well on this one. A little bit further shooting on relatively small steel, and I felt like I actually did pretty solid. So you had to engage some steel. There's basically colored targets with colored boxes on the ground. You could only engage those colored targets from the designated, shooting box of the same color. Shoot some targets at probably 40 yards from the shooting box to the targets. Downside of this one was that I'm a little tall, so there was actually a tree that was kind of covering up, one of the targets. So it took me a second to kind of find it, but once I did, engage that one pretty easily. Move to the left, shoot basically across at some more steel targets. There were some paper over there that you could engage, but you could actually engage the paper from anywhere. So went ahead and moved over to the right to the final shooting position because it was significantly closer to the paper, because the paper was, reduced size C zone basically. So pretty small paper. Engage that, finish the rest of the steel, two more paper targets. Actually, I think four more paper targets. But engaged all that and did perfectly fine. No misses on the paper, engaged all the steel, did actually, fairly well on this stage. So no big, issues with this one aside from, what everyone always wants to do and what I want to do in every stage, just shoot a little bit better. But overall, easy stage, pretty solid. And then finally, the long range stage. Finished on this one, this match. Really basic, if I'm being honest. Not that it's a bad thing, but shooting out to 600 yards with basically increments of 100. So 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600. I think that was actually the order. There may have been one target in between that wasn't there. Now that I think about it, I think it actually went 100, 200, 350, 450, 600, somewhere along those lines. I'll have to go back and watch the video to figure it out. But it's kind of hard to tell because I can't actually see the targets in the video, so I don't really remember if I'm being honest. But basically, you had to shoot from two different positions. The way that I did this was pretty much the way everyone did it. Shoot the very closest target from, the tank trap. Just get it mounted, shoot it from the tank trap, and then move to the other position and do the rest of the stage from a more stable position. Most people are using 16-inch rifles with either bipods or tripods, so most people just went prone on the next, kind of tabletop. I am shooting a SBR without a bipod, so I just got on my knees and mounted it on the crossbar of the actual tabletop, and that's how I shot it. To my knowledge, I may have been the only person that did that. There's very few people that are going to this match and shooting an SBR. Most people are using dedicated kind of competition guns, or at the very least, even if it's, kind of a weapon they may use for personal use or tactical shooting or whatever. Very few of them are shooting SBRs at this match, and most are using some type of bipod or something. I am not. So overall, felt like I did pretty solid, shooting out to that distance with an SBR using 55 grain. I really do need to switch to 77 for these matches though, because the main issue that I'm running into is that spotters can't give me impact calls. There's no splash. The 55 grain just in the terrain at RPR, there is not enough splash from a 55 grain bullet out of an SBR because it just doesn't have enough velocity for them to give me accurate callouts. So I'm basically just shooting based on what I think my holds are, which we'll come back to that in a second. And I'm really not getting any callouts. So I'm just kind of shooting, trying to judge where I'm hitting, and then going from there and making some minor adjustments. The reason I say I'm trying to judge where I'm shooting is because I make it a, intentional effort to not do any range finding or, dope calculations. I have a general idea of what my holds are in terms of, optic and actual, visual measurements for the distances that I'm shooting. So I try my best to say, hey, I think I'm shooting at 300 on this target. That's what it looks like to me. What is my holdover at, 300 yards with this rifle? Oh, it's, a foot and a half or whatever. That's just a random estimate. But I try to visualize how much holdover I need over that target instead of actually measuring out distances with a rangefinder and going off of exact, holds on the optic. Is that the best thing to do? Arguably, no, especially in competition shooting, it's not. But I want to know that I can shoot my rifle and my handgun to the best of my ability without having to rely on certain things like that. In the unlikely event I have to use a rifle in a self-defense situation, I am not going to have a rangefinder. So I want to know that I can shoot capably without using those tools as benefits and just rely purely on my own skill set and my own knowledge base. So that's what I do at these matches. And it worked decently. I mean, I finished the stage, can't really complain about that. So could have done a little bit better, but overall, I think I did pretty solid. So that is the match. I've got, plenty of more matches that I'm going to here in the future and in the, coming weeks as well. So if you have any questions or want to check out these matches, like I said, it's Central Texas Shooting Sports. So Cen-Tex Shooting Sports, they host a match every month out at RPR, which is Reveille Peak Ranch out in Burnett, I think. I forget what city it's actually in, middle of nowhere. But really fun match. If you have any other questions about competition shooting or anything I'm using, feel free to leave them in the comments. Please, if you like the video, if you like the stuff that I'm doing, please subscribe. Check out my other social media stuff. And like I said, if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you all have a great day, and thanks for watching.